Do you know the difference between a woman who just has sex and a woman who truly connects intimately with her partner? Communication. And no, I'm not talking about those deep conversations before or after. I'm talking about what you say in that exact moment when you're together, when everything is happening. For years, many of us have grown up with the idea that talking during sex is inappropriate, that decent women don't do it, or that if we express what we really feel, we might come off as too intense. But here's what no one tells you. The right words, said at the right moment, have the power to completely transform not only that encounter, but the entire dynamic of your intimate relationship. After years of experience and listening to hundreds of women in couples therapy, I've discovered there's a massive difference between women who manage to keep the spark alive for years and those who feel the passion fading. And that difference isn't about age, it's not about the body, it's not about how long they've been together, it's about how they communicate during intimacy. You who have lived enough know exactly what I mean when I talk about those relationships that start with fireworks and end up mechanical. Those nights where everything feels predictable, where you already know exactly what's going to happen and how it's going to end. And yes, it's normal for things to change over time, but it doesn't have to become boring or routine. But before we get into it, I need you to understand something fundamental. What I'm going to share with you isn't about manipulative techniques or cheap tricks. These are tools for intimate communication that work because they're based on something very real. Genuine emotional connection. And please, everything we're about to discuss requires consent, respect, and open communication. Nothing should make you feel uncomfortable or pressured. Now, let me tell you something that surprised me when I started researching this topic. Most intimacy issues in mature couples don't come from a lack of technique or experience. They come from fear. Fear of expressing what they really feel, fear of seeming too intense, fear of judgment, fear of comparison. And this fear is especially strong in women of our generation because we were raised with so many taboos around female sexuality. But here's the truth I've learned after so many years. Your partner wants to hear you. He wants to know that what he's doing affects you, moves you, excites you. Men, especially, respond strongly to visual and auditory validation. They need to know they're doing it right, that they're giving you real pleasure. And here's what truly fascinates me about this. It's not just about giving him what he needs. It's about allowing yourself to experience intimacy in a completely new way. When you finally give yourself permission to express what you feel, when you stop censoring yourself, when you allow your voice to be part of the experience, something magical happens. Your own pleasure intensifies exponentially. Why? Because when you vocalize what you're feeling, your brain processes that experience more intensely. It's like you're living the moment twice, once physically and once verbally. This dual stimulation creates a positive feedback loop that elevates the entire experience to a completely different level. But there's also something deeply liberating about using your voice during intimacy. Many of us have spent decades being polite, being proper, controlling our reactions, measuring our responses. The bedroom might be the only place where you can truly be completely free, completely authentic, completely unfiltered. And this freedom doesn't just feel amazing in the moment, it also has lasting effects on your self-esteem and your relationship with your own sexuality. When you allow yourself to be expressive, when you celebrate your own pleasure without guilt or shame, you're sending a powerful message to your subconscious. You deserve pleasure. Your sexuality is beautiful. Your joy matters. Now, before I share with you the specific phrases that can change everything, we need to talk about preparation. Because yes, this requires a bit of groundwork. You can't just show up one night and start saying completely different things without having laid the proper foundation. The first thing you need to do is create an atmosphere of openness outside the bedroom. And no, I'm not suggesting a super formal or technical conversation. You can start subtly during coffee, while walking, when you're both relaxed. Ask him what he likes to hear, if he feels comfortable with verbal communication during intimacy. Many times we assume we know what our partner likes after years together, but the truth is that preferences change, People evolve, and what worked 5 years ago might not be the same anymore. So this initial conversation not only gives you valuable information, but also opens the door for him to be more expressive with you. And here's something many women don't consider. This conversation is also your chance to set your own boundaries and preferences. You can share what kind of communication you like to hear, what words turn you on, what phrases make you feel uncomfortable. It's an exchange, not just an interview. The second step, and this is something that works incredibly well, is to use text messages as a testing ground. Yes, sexting, but adapted to your age and context. I'm not talking about sending compromising photos or anything that makes you uncomfortable. I'm talking about messages that build anticipation for the encounter. For example, during the day, you might text something like, "Tonight, I want you to do that thing I love," or "I'm thinking about how it feels to touch you." These messages serve as a thermometer. His reaction will tell you a lot about how receptive he is to this kind of more direct communication. And here's something super important that many women don't realize. Intimate text messages not only build anticipation, they also give you practice. They help you find your voice, discover which words feel natural and which ones make you uncomfortable. It's like a rehearsal before the main event. They also let you experiment with different levels of intensity. You can start with very subtle messages and gradually get more direct, depending on how he responds. It's a safe way to explore this new territory without the pressure of the immediate intimate moment. But here's what really makes sexting effective as preparation. It helps you overcome that internal voice that says you shouldn't express yourself in certain ways. When you write these things, when you see them written out, when you get a positive response, your brain starts to understand that it's okay to express your sexuality, that it's safe to be authentic about what you desire. Now let's talk about the 3 phrases that can completely transform your intimate experience. But before I share them with you, I want you to understand why they work. These phrases aren't magical by themselves. They work because they speak to 3 fundamental psychological needs we all have: validation, connection, and admiration. Validation is the need to know that we're doing it right, that we're giving pleasure, that our efforts are appreciated. Connection is the feeling that we're truly united with our partner, not just physically, but emotionally. And admiration is knowing that we are desired, that we're special, that we have something unique to offer. When you understand these underlying needs, you can use these phrases not as mechanical formulas, but as authentic expressions of what you're truly experiencing. And that authenticity is what makes them so powerful. The first phrase, and this is probably the most powerful of all, is, "You feel delicious." And yes, I know it might sound a little strange at first, especially if you're not used to expressing yourself verbally during intimacy. But let me explain why this phrase is so effective. First of all, it's completely universal. It doesn't matter if your partner is a man or a woman, it doesn't matter the position, it doesn't matter the specific moment of the encounter. This phrase always works because it speaks directly to the physical sensations you're experiencing. When you say you feel delicious, you're communicating that physical contact with them is giving you real pleasure. You're talking about textures, about temperature, about the way their body feels against yours. And this is incredibly powerful because it's not generic or cliché. It's specific to that moment, to that exact feeling. But here's what really makes this phrase special. It immediately boosts your partner's self-esteem. You're telling them that not only do you like what they're doing, but that their body, their physical presence bring you pleasure. It's personal, it's intimate, it's pure validation. And there's something else that makes this phrase particularly effective. It uses sensory language. It's not intellectual, it's not abstract emotion. It's completely physical and visceral. When they hear "you feel delicious," their brain immediately connects with the physical sensations of the present moment. Now, and this is super important, you should know that when you use this phrase, your partner will most likely increase the rhythm. This happens because men tend to interpret expressions of pleasure as a signal that they should intensify what they're doing. It's instinctive. They want to keep going. You can also reinforce the message with your body language. Keep your hands on him in a way that guides him to maintain the rhythm. Move your body in a way that supports the pattern you want to continue. Non-verbal communication can be just as powerful as words. And here's a very important detail about timing. You should only use this phrase when you're actually close to orgasm. If you use it too early in the encounter, it might speed up his process and cause him to finish before you've had time to fully build your own arousal. We who already have experience know that timing in intimacy is crucial. It's not like in the movies where everything happens simultaneously and perfectly. In real life, we need communication, we need guidance, and we need patience. It's also important to understand that this phrase has a powerful psychological effect on you as well. When you say, "Don't stop," you're taking control of your own experience, you're actively directing your own pleasure. And that sense of empowerment can significantly intensify your experience. Many women have been conditioned to be passive during sex, to just receive whatever is given without specifically asking for what they need. Using this phrase is an act of reclaiming your own sexual agency. You're saying that your pleasure matters, that you have the right to guide the experience toward what works for you. The third phrase, and this is my personal favorite, is, "You drive me wild." And yes, I know it sounds a bit casual, but that's exactly why it works so well. It's authentic, it's real, it's the kind of thing a woman says when she's truly losing control. This phrase is incredibly powerful because it does something few expressions achieve. It completely personalizes the experience. You're not saying that you feel good in general. You're not saying that the sex is nice. You're saying that he, specifically he, is the one driving you crazy with desire. Do you see the difference? It's the difference between "this feels good" and "you drive me wild." One is about the activity, the other is about him as a person, as a lover, as the one responsible for everything you're feeling. When a woman tells a man, "You drive me wild," she's speaking directly to his ego in the most positive way possible. She's telling him that he's special, that he has something that transforms her, that he is the one who awakens that wild and passionate side of her. This works on multiple levels. On an emotional level, it makes him feel unique and desired. On a psychological level, it reinforces his masculinity and his confidence. And on a physical level, that validation translates into more energy, more intensity, more connection. But there's something deeper happening here. This phrase is also a declaration about your own sexuality. You're admitting that you have a wild side, a side that can lose control, a side that can be completely consumed by desire. And that's incredibly liberating. When many women, especially those of us raised with conservative ideas about female sexuality, have parts of ourselves that we've kept hidden or repressed. This phrase is a way of giving those parts permission to come out and be expressed. You can use this phrase at different moments, during foreplay, while tension is building, in the middle of the act when you're truly feeling that loss of control, even afterwards, as a way to reinforce how incredible the experience was. You can also adapt it to suit your personality and your relationship. Some women prefer softer versions like "you drive me crazy" or "you make me lose myself." Others feel more authentic, using more intense expressions. What matters is that it's genuine for you. And here's what I find most beautiful about this phrase. It acknowledges that great sex is co-created. It's not something he does to you or you do to him. It's something you create together, where one person's response fuels the other's passion in a continuous cycle of pleasure and connection. But here's what really makes these phrases transformative. It's not just what you say, but how you say it. Your tone of voice, your facial expression, your body language, all of it must align with the words. If you say, "You feel delicious," with a flat voice and no emotion, it won't have the same impact as if you say it with genuine pleasure and admiration. And here's something I've learned after years of working with couples. Authenticity can't be faked. Your partner will know whether you're truly feeling what you're saying. That's why it's so important to use these phrases only when you really feel them, only when they're a genuine expression of what you're experiencing. Emotional authenticity has an energetic quality that's impossible to replicate. When you truly feel what you're saying, when the words come from a genuine experience, they carry a power that transcends language. Your partner doesn't just hear the words, they feel the truth behind them. And that emotional truth is what creates the deep connection we all long for. It's not just physical sex, it's real intimacy. It's the difference between having an encounter and creating an experience that both of you will remember and treasure. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, but I feel embarrassed to talk like that, or I'm not sure how my partner will react, or what if he judges me or thinks I'm too intense? And these concerns are completely valid. Many of us were raised with the idea that good women don't express their sexuality openly. But here's what I've learned. True intimacy requires vulnerability. And vulnerability is scary, especially when it comes to something as personal as sexuality. Yet, that shared vulnerability is exactly what creates the deep connection we're all searching for. If your partner judges you for expressing your pleasure, for communicating what you feel, for being authentic in intimacy, then you're not the problem. The problem is that you don't have the right partner for this level of emotional intimacy. A mature partner, one who truly loves and desires you, will receive your expressiveness as the gift that it is. He'll understand that when you open up in that way, when you share your intimate experience so directly, you're giving him access to a very private and special part of yourself. And if you're in a long-term relationship where you've never been very verbally expressive, your partner might be surprised at first. That's normal. But if the relationship is solid, if there's love and communication, that surprise will quickly turn into excitement and gratitude. But I also want you to know that you don't have to change overnight. If you've never been very expressive during intimacy, don't expect to transform completely in one night. It's a process, an evolution. You can start slowly with more audible sighs, more expressive moans, simpler words. What matters is that it's genuine. A heartfelt yes is better than an elaborate phrase that doesn't feel real. Your partner will connect far more with your emotional honesty than with any perfect but empty technique. And speaking of honesty, I need to say something you may not want to hear, but it's fundamental. Verbal communication during sex is not going to save a relationship that already has serious problems. If there's a lack of respect, if there's infidelity, if there are deep communication issues, these techniques might help temporarily, but they won't solve the root problems. What they can do is strengthen a relationship that already has a solid foundation. They can add a new dimension to intimacy that is already healthy. They can help keep the passion alive in a couple that loves each other, but may have fallen into routine. I also want you to understand that every couple is different. What works incredibly well with one person may not have the same effect with another. That's why that initial conversation I mentioned at the beginning is so important. You need to get to know your partner, understand their preferences, and respect their boundaries. Some people are very visual and respond strongly to verbal expressions. Others are more tactile and prefer communication through touch. Some are naturally expressive, others are more reserved. There is no one-size-fits-all formula. But here's what is universal: the need for connection, for validation, for knowing that we are desired and that we're giving pleasure. We all have those needs, regardless of age, gender, or experience. And this brings me to something very important that I want you to understand. Using your voice during intimacy is not just for your partner's benefit, it's also for you. When you express what you feel, when you verbalize your pleasure, you allow yourself to experience intimacy more fully. There's something incredibly freeing about being able to say exactly what you're feeling, about not holding anything back, about not needing to be appropriate or proper, about being fully authentic in one of the most vulnerable and intimate moments of your life. And that authenticity has a huge effect on your sexual experience. When you're not worried about how you look or how you sound, when you're not censoring your natural reactions, you can fully surrender to the moment. You can experience levels of pleasure you might not have known were possible. But there's also a deeper psychological aspect. When you use your voice during sex, you're reclaiming your sexual agency. You're affirming that your pleasure matters, that you have the right to guide the experience, that you are an active participant in the creation of this intimacy. For many women, especially those raised with restrictive ideas about female sexuality, this can be deeply healing. It's a way of rewriting old messages about what's appropriate or acceptable for a woman. Now, I want to talk about something many women our age face: comparison. Especially if your partner has had previous relationships, it's natural to wonder how you measure up, what they did that you don't, whether you were as good as them. And I need you to hear this very clearly. Comparison is the enemy of intimacy. When you're in your head comparing yourself to others, you can't be present in your body experiencing the moment. When you're worried about whether you're enough, you can't enjoy what you truly are. The truth is that true intimacy isn't about being better than someone else. It's about being fully yourself with someone who loves you exactly as you are. It's about creating something unique between the two of you, something that doesn't exist with anyone else because you are unique together. And this is especially true for mature women. You don't have to compete with younger women. You don't have to pretend to be something you're not. What you have that they don't is experience, self-awareness, and confidence in who you are. A woman in her 40s, 50s, or 60s who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to ask for it is infinitely more attractive than a young woman who is insecure and doesn't yet know herself. Your emotional maturity, your ability to communicate, your freedom from youthful insecurities, all of these are huge advantages. So use those advantages. Use your self-knowledge to communicate exactly what you need. Use your life experience to create real intimacy, not just physical, but emotional. Use your confidence to be authentic, to be vulnerable, to be real. And here's something incredibly important. The phrases we've been talking about are just the beginning. They're the gateway to deeper, richer, intimate communication. Once you feel comfortable expressing yourself verbally, you can begin exploring other forms of communication. You can start talking about fantasies, about specific desires, about things you've always wanted to try but never dared to mention. You can give more specific guidance. You can ask for exactly what you need. You can share your boundaries and your preferences. This open and honest communication is what sets mature intimacy apart from youthful intimacy. When you're young, much of sex is instinctive. It's about exploration and discovery. When you're mature, it can be intentional, it can be specific, it can be exactly what you want it to be. And that is incredibly powerful. It means you don't have to settle for mediocre experiences. It means you don't have to pretend to like something when you don't. It means you can create exactly the intimate life you want to have. But it also means you have the responsibility to communicate what you want. You can't expect your partner to read your mind. You can't get frustrated about something they're not doing if you've never asked for it. Clear, direct communication is the foundation of all good intimacy. And here's something many women don't realize. Sexual communication isn't just about the act itself. It's also about the conversations before and after. It's about creating a general atmosphere of openness and honesty in your relationship. That means talking about sex when you're not having sex. It means discussing what worked well after an encounter. It means sharing fantasies while you're out for a walk. It means creating a safe space where both of you can express desires, concerns, and curiosities. These conversations may feel awkward at first, especially if you've never had them before, but with practice, they become natural. And the impact they have on your intimate life is extraordinary. When there's open communication outside the bedroom, communication inside the bedroom flows much more easily. When you've already talked about preferences and boundaries in a relaxed setting, it's much easier to apply that knowledge during intimacy, and vice versa. When you start being more expressive verbally during sex, it becomes easier to have deep conversations about sexuality at other times. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. But I also want to be very clear about something. All of this requires having the right partner. A partner who respects you, who values your communication, who is just as interested in your pleasure as in their own. If your partner isn't willing to listen to you, if they get upset when you express your needs, if they'd rather you stay silent, then maybe you need to evaluate whether that's truly the right relationship for you. Because here's the truth, you deserve incredible intimacy. You deserve a partner who celebrates your expressiveness, who gets excited when you share what you feel, who does everything they can to give you pleasure. You don't have to settle for less. just because of your age or the length of your relationship. In fact, I firmly believe that mature women deserve the best intimacy of our lives. We've spent enough time learning what we don't want. We've had enough mediocre experiences. It's time to have exactly what we do want. And that means not just using these phrases, it means building an entire culture of open communication in your relationship. It means talking about sex outside the bedroom. It also means discussing fantasies, preferences, and boundaries. It means being honest about what works and what doesn't. It might sound intimidating at first, especially if you've been together for a long time and have never had these kinds of conversations. But I promise you, it's worth it. The intimacy you can create when both partners are willing to be completely honest and communicative is extraordinary. And I'm not just talking about physical intimacy. I mean that deep emotional connection that happens when two people can be completely vulnerable with each other, when they can share not only their bodies, but also their most intimate desires, their most secret fantasies, their most specific needs. That's the kind of intimacy that builds lasting, fulfilling relationships. That's the kind of intimacy that keeps passion alive after years together. And it all begins with small steps, like learning to use your voice during sex. I also want to talk about something that's especially relevant for women in our stage of life: sexual reinvention. Many of us have gone through significant changes: divorces, loss of partners, kids moving out, hormonal shifts. These changes can be incredible opportunities to rediscover and redefine our sexuality. If you're starting a new relationship after many years in a previous one, this is the perfect time to implement this kind of communication from the beginning. You don't have to carry forward old patterns or dynamics that no longer serve you. You can create something completely new and authentic. And if you're in a long-term relationship, these changes in communication can be like renewing your vows. But in the bedroom, they can revitalize a connection that had become predictable and bring new energy to something that may have felt stagnant. But there's something deeper here. When you start to use your voice this way, when you allow yourself to be expressive and authentic, you're also modeling a kind of intimacy for your partner. You're giving him implicit permission to be more expressive, more vulnerable, more communicative too. Many men, especially those from our generation, were also raised with restrictive ideas about emotional expression. They too may be holding things back, suppressing natural responses, feeling like they have to maintain a certain level of control or composure. When you open up, when you show that it's safe to be authentic in intimacy, you're giving an incredible gift. You're showing him that he can drop the mask, that he can be fully present and real with you. And this is exactly where the greatest power of this journey lies. When two people truly open up to each other, when they let go of shame, fear, and old patterns, that's when space is created for intimacy that doesn't just satisfy the body, but also nourishes the soul. It's no longer just about pleasure. It's about deep recognition, emotional closeness, the feeling of being seen, heard, and accepted without a mask. And that is what we all truly seek, regardless of age. So don't wait for the perfect conditions to magically appear. Start now, with one sincere sentence, with one look, with one yes that comes from deep within. Your sexuality, your ability to connect, your power to communicate, it's all already within you. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for perfection. Just begin and allow yourself to live the intimacy you truly deserve. Sometimes it's not what a man says, but how he acts in his most vulnerable moments that reveals the depth of his love. According to Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, true love isn't just spoken, it's revealed unconsciously through intimacy, in the way he holds you close, the way his eyes linger on yours, or how his breath aligns with yours in silence. His deepest emotions come to light. But how can you tell if it's love, not just desire? Jung's work on the unconscious mind highlights 4 powerful signs, subtle, involuntary behaviors that only appear when a man is genuinely, profoundly in love. Jung taught that love is not merely an emotion, it is the fusion of souls, where raw, instinctive truths come to the surface. When a man is emotionally connected, his body and mind begin to express truths he may not even consciously recognize. Today we explore 4 intimate behaviors that, according to Jungian psychology, indicate his love runs far deeper than mere attraction. These are not just habits, they are unconscious acts of devotion, and by the end of this you'll know exactly what to look for. The first sign, deep eye contact during intimacy. There's something almost mystical about sustained eye contact in a moment of deep connection. It transcends physical attraction and touches the essence of emotional intimacy. Jung often called the eyes the windows to the soul, and for good reason. In his study of the unconscious, he recognized that the gaze is one of the rare involuntary expressions of the inner self. Words can be chosen, even manipulated, but the eyes reveal truths the mind might not yet be ready to admit. When a man meets your gaze during moments of intimacy, it is far more than passion. It's a silent admission. He isn't just looking at you, he's allowing himself to be seen. And that act of being truly seen is one of the most profound forms of surrender. This level of eye contact is rare. It requires deep emotional presence. Many men, shaped by cultural expectations, learn to separate sex from emotion. For them, intimacy may become a purely physical act. But when a man is deeply in love, something changes. His need for connection overrides old habits of detachment. His gaze lingers not just because he is physically exposed, but because he is emotionally vulnerable. Jung would say, this is the anima, the inner feminine, coming forward. It is the part of his psyche that longs for connection, depth, and emotional union. In this moment, the eyes become more than a physical feature, they become a bridge between souls. On the other hand, avoiding eye contact can speak volumes too. A man who looks away during intimacy may still feel desire, even care, but likely harbors emotional barriers. He may fear the vulnerability that comes with being fully seen. Or perhaps he's protecting a part of himself he's not ready to face. In Jungian terms, this could reflect unresolved shadows, hidden fears or old wounds that prevent him from surrendering completely. And the eyes don't lie the way words can. That's why so many people avoid them, to preserve control, to hide what they don't want seen. But when a man maintains eye contact, unwavering and open, it speaks volumes. It means he trusts you, not just with his body, but with his truest self, the raw, unpolished version that exists behind the mask. There's a reason lovers instinctively close their eyes when they kiss, only to open them after, as if to confirm the presence of the one they love. That quiet reconnection is instinctual, a primitive way of saying, I'm here, fully. This is why deep eye contact is the first and perhaps most powerful sign of true emotional connection. It can't be forced. It's not a performance. It's an involuntary act of presence, a moment when two people drop their defenses. In that shared gaze, love doesn't shout, it simply is. No masks, no pretenses, just two souls meeting in truth. The second sign, prioritizing your pleasure over his own. In Jungian psychology, real intimacy is the meeting of opposites, the merging of two distinct selves into something greater. This sacred union, what Jung called the conjunctio, isn't just about physical satisfaction. It's an alchemical joining of souls in shared surrender. And one of the clearest reflections of this is how a man gives pleasure when he's truly in love. Lust is selfish. It seeks to satisfy itself. Love, however, seeks connection. When a man puts your joy ahead of his own, it's not just kindness. It's an unconscious declaration of devotion. A message, spoken without words, your happiness is my happiness. According to Jung, the shadow, those repressed parts of our psyche, often controls our primitive impulses, including selfish desire. But love has the power to transcend that. A man who loves doesn't delay his pleasure out of duty. He does it because giving is the pleasure. That's the union of masculine and feminine energies at work, drive meeting receptivity and transforming sex into something sacred. You'll see it in how he pays attention to your responses, remembers what brings you joy, and feels genuine fulfillment in your satisfaction. His care isn't calculated, it's instinctual, as if your body were a part of his own. In contrast, desire that's purely physical it consumes without consideration. But love nourishes. A man chasing lust may focus only on himself. A man in love is undone by you. Jung would say this transformation is the anima, the inner feminine, guiding him toward empathy, tenderness, and a longing to truly merge. That's why the smallest gestures, the way he holds you afterward, the sincerity behind "was that good for you?" reveal far more than any dramatic declaration ever could. And this selflessness isn't confined to the bedroom. Jung viewed relationships as mirrors, reflecting what we must face and heal within ourselves. A man who gives freely in intimacy is often one who has already wrestled with his own insecurities, his need for control, and come out on the other side willing to give, not take. That vulnerability is the essence of real love, not perfection, but presence. When he puts your pleasure first, he's saying with his body what words rarely express: "You are sacred to me." This is the fingerprint of real love. It can't be imitated. It's effortless, genuine, a sign that his devotion reaches beyond the surface, into the soul. And that, Jung believed, is where true transformation begins. The third sign, post-intimacy affection and emotional openness. The moments after intimacy often reveal more about a man's feelings than the act itself. Carl Jung understood that physical closeness has the power to dissolve defenses, temporarily quieting the ego and allowing the unconscious to surface. When a man is deeply in love, sex becomes more than a climax. It becomes a doorway to emotional nakedness. This is why post-sex behavior is so telling. The way he holds you, the words he shares, the vulnerability he displays when the passion subsides. These are not conscious choices, but unconscious revelations of how he truly sees you. Jung's concept of the shadow, the hidden, often repressed parts of our psyche, explains why many men struggle with vulnerability. Society conditions men to associate strength with emotional restraint, teaching them to retreat after physical intimacy as if affection somehow diminishes their masculinity. But when a man loves deeply, this conditioning fails him. His shadow, the wounded, sensitive self he typically keeps guarded, emerges without his permission. He might pull you closer instead of turning away, share childhood memories, or simply rest his forehead against yours in silent communion. These are not calculated moves. They are the psyche's rebellion against pretense, proof that he associates you with safety rather than just pleasure. This post-sex vulnerability serves an important psychological function. Jung believed that true intimacy requires integration, the merging of our light and dark aspects with another person. When a man remains emotionally present after sex, he's demonstrating that he trusts you with his whole self, not just his desire. The way he strokes your hair absent-mindedly or shares a private thought reveals that his defenses have momentarily collapsed. There is no performance here, no seduction, just the raw, unfiltered truth of his attachment to you. Contrast this with encounters where a man withdraws immediately after climax. While not always indicative of emotional absence, this separation often suggests that his connection to you remains primarily physical. The ego quickly rebuilds its walls, reasserting control where moments before there was surrender. But when a man lingers, when he treats the afterglow as something precious rather than an inconvenience, he's showing you what Jung called the transcendent function in action, the ability of love to dissolve the boundaries between two people. Ultimately, post-sex affection is love's most honest language. It's in these quiet moments when the body is sated and the mind unguarded that the heart speaks loudest. A man who opens up to you here isn't just sharing his bed, he's sharing his inner world. And that, according to Jung, is the chest sign that what he feels is far deeper than desire. It's the recognition of souls. Number 4, synchronized movements and unconscious mirroring. In the silent language of lovers, the most profound truths are spoken not through words, but through the unconscious choreography of bodies moving in perfect harmony. Carl Jung's concept of the collective unconscious, that deep reservoir of primal memory shared by all humanity, helps explain why two people deeply in love often fall into spontaneous synchronization. When his breathing slows to match yours, when your limbs entangle without thought or effort, when a simple touch seems to communicate more than paragraphs ever could. These are not coincidences, but biological poetry. They are evidence that your connection has moved beyond conscious intention into the realm of instinct, where the ancient wisdom of the body overrides the calculated movements of the mind. Jung believed this phenomenon stemmed from what he called participation mystique, a primordial state of emotional oneness where boundaries between individuals temporarily dissolve. In ordinary life, we maintain careful control over our physicality, but love has a way of dismantling these barriers. When a man is emotionally surrendered, his nervous system begins to resonate with yours in what science now calls limbic synchrony. His heartbeat may subtly adjust to yours, his gestures might mirror yours like echoes across some invisible bridge between souls. This isn't imitation, it's communion, the body's way of declaring what the conscious mind might still be too guarded to admit. We are no longer separate. The significance of this synchronization becomes especially apparent during moments of deep stillness. Notice how when lying together in quiet intimacy, you might both shift positions simultaneously or sigh in the same rhythm. These micro moments reveal that your connection operates on a level far deeper than social interaction. It's a biological dance encoded in our very DNA. Jung would argue this represents the archetype of the divine couple manifesting in real time, that ancient symbol of wholeness found in myths across cultures. Your bodies are quite literally remembering what your minds may have forgotten. That love at its highest form is a return to unity. Contrast this with the stiff, self-conscious movements of casual encounters, where each participant remains acutely aware of their separateness. Without emotional investment, the body stays guarded, movements remain calculated, and true synchronization rarely occurs. But when love is present, the need for this vigilance melts away. His hand finds the small of your back exactly when you need support. Your head nestles into the curve of his shoulder, as if the space was made just for you. This effortless alignment is the physical manifestation of what Jung called enantiodroia, the tendency of opposites to move toward their counterpart, creating balance. What makes these unconscious movements so profoundly intimate is their complete authenticity. Unlike spoken declarations which can be crafted or controlled, the body's language of love cannot be falsified. When his body moves in silent harmony with yours, it's the purest expression of his psyche's recognition. You are not other, but extension, not object, but home. In these wordless moments, Jung's theories cease to be abstract concepts and become living truth. That in the alchemy of true connection, two separate beings can momentarily touch the divine unity from which we all came. This is why synchronized movement remains love's most ancient and sacred dance, choreographed not by conscious will, but by the timeless wisdom of the unconscious mind. Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist, saw love as far more than a fleeting emotion or social construct. It was a profound, psychological event, a collision of the conscious and unconscious mind. At the heart of his theory lies the concept of the anima and animus, the hidden feminine and masculine aspects within each of us. According to Jung, every man carries an inner feminine image, thema, shaped by his experiences, expectations, and even cultural influences. When he falls deeply in love, he isn't just drawn to a woman. He's encountering a reflection of his own soul. This is why the right partner doesn't just feel exciting. She feels familiar, as if she's always been part of him. The stronger the emotional pull, the more Hisma aligns with her essence, creating an almost mystical sense of recognition. This is why some loves feel destined, as if they were written in the stars, because in a way they were written in his psyche long before they ever met. But this projection is only the beginning. True intimacy, in Jung's view, requires something far more vulnerable: the willingness to lower the masks we wear in daily life. Most men are conditioned to suppress their sensitivity, to armor themselves against judgment. Yet when a man is deeply in love, something shifts. The unconscious mind, The vast hidden part of us that stores instincts, fears and desires begins to override his defenses. He doesn't just want to be close. He needs it at a primal level. This is why you'll notice subtle but unmistakable shifts in his behavior when he's emotionally bonded. He might share childhood memories without prompting, or his body language might soften in ways he can't control. These aren't calculated choices, they're involuntary serenas to the depth of his connection. Jung also believed that the unconscious speaks most clearly in moments of intimacy, not just through words but through symbols, sensations and instinctive actions. Think of the way lovers synchronize their breathing, or how a man's touch becomes almost reverent when his emotions are fully engaged. These aren't just romantic gestures, they're expressions of the unconscious mind at work, subtly binding two people together. In Jungian psychology, love is a form of alchemy. It transforms the raw material of physical attraction into the gold of deep emotional and spiritual union. And when a man is truly in love, his unconscious reveals it in the most beautiful and involuntary ways. So how does this hidden psychology show itself in the bedroom? The answer lies in 4 powerful, deeply intimate behaviors. Acts so instinctual and revealing that they bypass the rational mind completely. These aren't techniques you can fake or learn from a book. They are the pure, unfiltered language of the heart. Let's revisit these 4 signs of unconscious devotion. Deep eye contact, selfless giving, post-intimacy vulnerability, synchronized physical and emotional rhythm. Together they form a silent language, a language that speaks of commitment, emotional depth, and soulful connection. Carl Jung's teachings remind us that love isn't just an emotion. It's a truth that shows up in the most unguarded moments. It lives in the body, in the breath, in the gaze, when we're too raw to pretend. If your partner shows these behaviors, you're not just experiencing physical intimacy. You're sharing something much deeper, a psychological and spiritual bond that transcends the surface. Now it's your turn. Do you recognize these signs in your relationship? Have you witnessed other unconscious gestures that revealed true love? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. If this exploration of love through Jung's lens resonated with you, be sure to like and subscribe for more content rooted in psychology and emotional wisdom. And if you're curious to go even deeper, let us know. Would you like our next video to uncover Jung's hidden red flags in relationships, the subtle warning signs that a connection may not be as healthy or fulfilling as it seems? Until then, remember, the body never lies about love. Listen to what's felt beneath the surface, and you'll always know the truth.
You are not here by accident. Something deep within you brought you to this video at this exact moment in time. And once you finish listening, you'll begin to understand why. Carl Jung once said that the soul doesn't always awaken through light, but rather through wounds. True awakening doesn't necessarily come during times of peace and stillness. It often arrives when something inside you breaks just enough to make you look inward. If you're going through a deep emotional pain right now, you might not fully realize it yet, but that pain didn't come to destroy you. It came to transform you. It is not here as a punishment, but as a catalyst for something bigger. There are clear signs that what you're experiencing is not just suffering. You're going through a spiritual awakening. One of the first signs of this is when the pain you're feeling begins to challenge the beliefs you used to hold as absolute truth. That emotional impact, the one that left you breathless, the wound that still throbs inside of you, it didn't only bring sadness or confusion. It also caused a crack in the way you perceive life. And through that crack, awareness begins to enter. What once seemed unquestionable, what once formed the foundation of your identity, now starts to lose meaning. The beliefs you built your life around begin to crumble, piece by piece. And yes, that collapse might have frightened you. It might have left you feeling lost or empty. But in truth, it was the beginning of something much deeper. It was the start of an internal cleansing. When pain shakes you from the inside, it forces you to confront things you had long avoided. Not because you're weak, but because you're no longer able to maintain a version of yourself that no longer reflects who you are becoming. That internal rupture is not a curse. It's a reconfiguration of your consciousness. It's a signal that your soul is no longer willing to live in unconsciousness. It's ready to awaken, no matter how much it hurts. That moment of rupture, although it may feel like an ending, is actually a rebirth. When pain begins to tear down the mental structures that once held you together, the experience is far from easy. You feel as though you're losing control, as if the ground beneath you is no longer solid. But that loss of control is necessary, because only by falling out of what is familiar can you finally come into contact with what is real. That pain doesn't only take things away from you, it also reveals things. You begin to realize how many decisions you made out of fear, how many relationships you held onto out of need, how many versions of yourself were crafted not for authenticity, but simply to please others or survive. This recognition is uncomfortable, yes, but it is also incredibly freeing. It's in that moment that you start to see clearly what was always there, but you had refused or were unable to see before. The mind will resist because change hurts. The ego will cling to the old, to the safe, to the known. But the soul, quietly and patiently, gives thanks. Because with every mental structure that collapses, a space is created. And in that space, something new begins to bloom. This new version of yourself does not come from comfort. It is born from inner cracking, from the pain you chose not to numb, but to confront, to feel, to pass through. That, although many people may not understand it, is a deeply spiritual act. It is your soul taking the wheel, guiding you forward. And even though the process may feel dark and uncertain, it is profoundly sacred. The second sign begins to manifest when something within you changes, not on the surface, but deep in the core of your being. It's when your sensitivity intensifies, sometimes so subtly that you don't even notice it right away. But gradually, unmistakably, you start feeling more, not just emotionally, but energetically, spiritually. This shift doesn't happen randomly. It often begins in the aftermath of pain. Since that moment when suffering entered your life, something fundamental within you was altered. That pain didn't just change how you think. It awakened your ability to feel with greater depth, with sharper clarity. Suddenly, you find yourself more attuned to your environment, more alert to emotions, energies, and truths that once slipped past you unnoticed. What you used to overlook becomes impossible to ignore. And this isn't by chance. It's one of the clearest ways the soul begins to awaken. Deep emotional pain has the peculiar power to dissolve the mental and emotional filters that once shielded you from the world. It doesn't destroy you. It opens you. It strips away the armor, leaves you raw, exposed, vulnerable, but also profoundly receptive. In that open state, the superficial loses its grip. You no longer get distracted by appearances. You're no longer swayed by hollow words or empty gestures, because now you feel. You feel what resonates and what doesn't. You feel what's real and what's performative. You feel what lives and what is merely pretending to live. This newfound sensitivity may feel uncomfortable at first. It may even hurt. It can make the noise of the world unbearable and the chaos around you overwhelming. But it's also a gateway, a portal to transformation. Because once you're cracked open like that, you no longer move through life out of habit or inertia. You move with intention, with awareness. You begin to inhabit yourself in a new way. You start seeing the world with a depth and intensity that you never knew existed. What once felt flat and one-dimensional now holds layers of meaning. And although this transformation can be painful, it's also profoundly liberating. You begin to live on a different frequency, one that is more authentic, more aligned with your essence. In this new space, emotions are no longer denied or buried. They are honored, listened to. Wounds are no longer hidden away in shame. They are acknowledged and integrated into your being. Pain, once viewed as the enemy, becomes something else entirely. A teacher, a guide. The sensitivity that pain triggered within you wasn't a glitch in the system. It was a silent awakening, a subtle, energetic opening that nudged you to start perceiving the world beyond the surface, beyond what the eyes can see. Where you once reacted impulsively from the ego, you now respond from a place of depth, a place within you that you perhaps never knew existed. You begin to notice that conversations leave a stronger imprint on you. The energy of certain places either lifts you or drains you. Silence begins to speak louder than words. And while this can sometimes be overwhelming, it's actually a clear sign of inner evolution. You're no longer capable of living anesthetized. You can't numb yourself like before. Your soul simply won't allow it. And then something even more profound begins to happen. You realize that the pain no longer just hurts. It changes you. It softens you. It makes you more compassionate, more present, more awake. You begin to see things you once ignored. People you used to surround yourself with suddenly feel out of sync, disconnected. Decisions you once made without questioning now seem foreign, as though they were never truly yours. Paths that felt like obligations are now heavy, lifeless. They lack purpose. And what once seemed solid and secure slowly begins to crumble. Not because you're losing your way, but because you're finally walking awake. That's the real shift. You're not lost. You've just stopped walking in your sleep. And because of that, anything that no longer vibrates in alignment with your truth becomes unbearable to carry. The weight of inauthenticity grows heavier. The need for external validation fades. The urge to pretend, to conform, withers away. Not everyone will understand this version of you, but you no longer seek to be understood. You can't go back to who you were. The pain that cracked you open also opened a door that cannot be closed again. This wasn't a breakdown. It was an expansion, an irreversible expansion. And with that expansion, your pace changes. You can no longer rush through life as you once did. You can't fill your days with noise to avoid the silence, because now silence holds truth. Your body begins to demand more stillness. Your energy cries out for more presence, more listening, more pause. You become selective, not out of arrogance, but out of energetic necessity. You begin to protect your inner space like never before, because now you know how deeply you're affected by what you allow in. You stop tolerating connections that dim your light. You walk away from environments that pull you away from your center, not because you think you're better than others, but because you've learned what it costs you to lose touch with your essence. And after everything you've endured, you are no longer willing to give that up. This new level of sensitivity also unlocks something else, a kind of inner vision. You start to see patterns where there used to be only chaos. You start to sense lessons hidden within the pain. You begin to understand that the very thing that broke you also pointed you toward a more authentic version of yourself. You're no longer the same. The shift might not be visible to others, but you feel it. Deep within you, you know. Because now, you experience life differently. And in that deeper experience, you access a wisdom that was never taught, only remembered. Pain has made you more human, yes, but also more soul, more attuned to the invisible, more grounded in the essential, more loyal to your own truth. You've become someone who feels more, sees more, and lives more, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. The third sign appears quietly, yet profoundly. It happens when you begin to release the version of yourself that once defined you, without having a clear vision of where you're headed. One of the most transformative effects of emotional pain, especially when it serves as a catalyst for awakening, is that it breaks down everything that you no longer are. And it does so without asking for your permission. It doesn't come with a warning, nor does it wait for your readiness. It simply begins. Suddenly, almost without realizing it, you wake up one day and notice that the things that once gave you identity no longer resonate. You feel a deep, unexplainable detachment from the roles you played, the routines you followed, the beliefs you held so tightly, and even the dreams you once chased with passion. These things, people, places, habits, begin to fall away like autumn leaves, making room for something new, something sacred, something unknown. It's not something the mind chooses. It's something the body feels. A quiet but undeniable inner certainty begins to rise. It's as though your entire being finally acknowledges the truth that was waiting patiently beneath the surface, that you can no longer carry what once defined you. Not because it was bad, but because it no longer belongs. You've outgrown it. You've changed. You've evolved. This letting go doesn't mean loss. It means purification. It's not an end. It's an opening. It's space being cleared, not for something random, but for something more aligned with your soul. And yes, even if that something has yet to take shape, even if you find yourself suspended in a mysterious in-between, what you're experiencing is not emptiness. It's the sacred ground of transformation. It's the exact moment when your soul begins to reclaim the space that was once ruled by your ego. Letting go of what once defined you is one of the most silent and courageous acts of awakening. Because there are no guarantees, no clear paths, no external voices reassuring you that you're on the right track. All you have is a burning inner guidance, a whisper of truth that comes not from logic, but from the depth of your soul. And in that inner fire, you begin to see just how many things you are holding on to, not out of love or authenticity, but out of habit, fear, and the desire to be accepted by people or systems that no longer reflect your essence. You start releasing relationships where you can't fully be yourself. You walk away from roles that you fulfilled only out of obligation. You question the image you've built of yourself, one shaped more by trauma and survival than by truth and authenticity. And though it may initially feel like you're losing your identity, a deeper part of you knows that you're finally being set free. You no longer care about being understood by everyone. You care about being honest with yourself. Approval stops being your motivator. Peace becomes your compass. And that shift, that new way of seeing and choosing, is not random. It's the soul maturing. A maturity that doesn't come from age, but from breaking open and refusing to run away from yourself. You may feel lost, yes, confused perhaps, because the old has crumbled and the new has yet to fully form. But this disorientation is not a sign that you're broken. It's a sign that you're being reborn. You are learning how to move through life with a different kind of energy, one that flows not from the mind, but from the heart, a different center, a different frequency. And even when the world pressures you to define yourself, to explain yourself, to fit into a box again, you choose to remain in the unknown with dignity, because now you understand that the void is not emptiness. The void is the quiet space where what is real begins to emerge. And in that quiet, without even searching, you start to rediscover yourself. Not the version of you shaped by the world, but the version that always existed underneath. The essence you forgot. The you that needs no title, no applause, no validation to feel worthy. You begin to recognize yourself in the calm you once feared, in the stillness you now welcome, in the honesty you no longer suppress. You don't need to impress anymore. You only need to be true. And this shedding of your former identity, it's not escape, it's growth. It's your soul peeling away layers that have already served their purpose. And yes, there may be moments of nostalgia, moments where you remember the person you used to be, the dreams you once had. But right alongside that nostalgia is a new kind of peace, a quiet joy. Because what's coming into your life now isn't external, it's you. It's your essence returning home. It's your energy realigning with your truth. It's your authenticity stepping back into the light. And here's the most important part. You don't need to understand it all. You don't need a detailed plan or perfect clarity. All you need is to trust that inner pull, the one that leads you into the unknown, yet somehow feels more familiar, more honest, more you than anything that's come before. The pain didn't just change you, it purified you. It stripped away the illusions. It burned through the noise, so you could finally remember what you've always been, so you could come home to yourself. And now, all that's left is to walk forward, not with certainty, but with faith, not with fear, but with presence, not as who you were, but as who you truly are. The fourth sign is when you begin to feel a deeper connection with the invisible. It's not something that happens overnight, but rather something that awakens gradually, often after a period of profound emotional pain. You go through something that breaks you, shatters your world, and leaves you with questions you never asked before. And then, something inside you starts to shift, not just emotionally, but energetically, spiritually. It's as if your soul, having passed through suffering, has become more refined, more attuned. You begin to sense things you never noticed before. It's like a veil has been lifted. You become aware of subtle patterns in life, what many call synchronicities. You start seeing how certain people appear exactly when you need them, how messages or signs seem to show up at just the right time. They could be a sentence in a book, a song on the radio, or even a random conversation you overhear. These moments feel too perfectly timed to be random. And while the old version of you might have brushed them off as coincidences, the new you knows better. The pain took away many things from you. It stripped you down, maybe even made you feel lost. But it also did something unexpected. It opened a sacred doorway. Through that doorway, you began to perceive a new kind of language, intuitive, symbolic, silent, yet undeniably real. The kind of language that doesn't shout, it whispers, but its truth is so strong that you can't ignore it. You also start to notice that your emotions are no longer confined to just you. You begin to feel the energy of others. You walk into a room and can sense tension before anyone says a word. You look into someone's eyes and you can feel the weight they're carrying, even if they smile and pretend everything's fine. You know when someone is hiding pain, not because they told you, but because you can feel it in your bones. And the strange part? You didn't study this. You didn't read it in a book. It simply awakened after you broke down. Because that crack in your soul, where the pain entered, also became the space where the light came in. A different kind of light, a new level of consciousness, a heightened sensitivity, a way of experiencing the world that you never had access to before. Now, you don't seek answers the way you used to. You're no longer chasing certainty. What you seek is something far more profound, a sense of inner guidance, of quiet companionship, of a presence that transcends what your hands can touch and your eyes can see. You probably don't tell many people about this, not because it's a secret, but because you know that words will never do it justice. This experience is deeply intimate. It happens in the quiet moments when your mind finally silences and your soul begins to listen. And what it hears doesn't always have a shape or form, but it always carries truth. A kind of truth that doesn't need proof because it resonates so deeply that you simply know it's real. You begin to trust your intuition in a way you never have before. Not because you can explain why you feel certain things or why you just know something is right or wrong, but because ignoring that inner knowing is no longer an option. Every time you follow that intuitive pull, life responds. Life confirms it. Again and again, it reminds you that you are not alone, that something greater is walking alongside you, guiding your steps in ways you can't fully understand. This connection doesn't make you special. It makes you aware. It makes you present. And with that presence, your entire way of living begins to transform. You no longer search outside yourself for what you've already discovered within. You stop desperately looking for signs because you've become the kind of person who's naturally receptive to them. And in that openness, the answers come, not with force, but with grace. You begin to recognize that there's an invisible thread tying everything together, that every event, even the painful ones, had a place in the grand design, that every heartbreak, every loss, every fall was pushing you closer to the person you were always meant to become, more connected, more awake, more willing to live from your soul rather than your fear. And that is one of the clearest signs of spiritual awakening. You can no longer live disconnected from the invisible realms because they now live inside you. Over time, this connection becomes your refuge, not a place to hide, but a place that holds you steady when the world outside begins to tremble. It's like tuning in to an inner frequency, a vibration that soothes you, guides you, reminds you of who you are. And from that place, you begin to live. Quietly, intuitively, authentically. You become more present in the small moments, more attuned to subtle signs, more open to receiving what cannot be predicted or controlled, but can absolutely be felt. You stop forcing the path. You begin to move with what resonates, and you gently let go of what drifts away, without needing to know why. Because now, you trust that there is a greater order at play, one that doesn't always make sense to the mind, but speaks deeply to the soul. And something powerful begins to happen in that trust. Your energy shifts. And as your energy changes, so does everything you attract. Life starts to meet you where you are. When you are aligned with the invisible, the visible begins to organize itself around that alignment. You no longer need predictions, or validation, or guarantees. All you need is that inner voice you've come to recognize as your own. that gentle whisper that has been with you ever since pain cracked you open, that presence that now walks with you, silently, steadily, carrying you closer and closer to your true purpose. And the fifth sign is this: you've stopped fighting what you feel, and you've finally started to listen. When emotional pain becomes the beginning of your awakening, one of the most profound shifts is that you let go of resistance. You stop pretending that everything is fine. You no longer need to suppress the ache within you or keep up the illusion of being strong, composed, and untouched by pain. Instead, you allow yourself to feel, truly feel, without fear. You no longer run from your emotions, numb them, or try to bury them under layers of distraction or false strength. You begin to let them move through you, to pass through your body like a wave, unfiltered and unjudged. And while this might seem fragile from the outside, it is, in truth, one of the most courageous acts of the soul. Because it is only when you stop fighting your emotions that real transformation begins, not from a place of control, but from a space of deep understanding and presence. This kind of surrender is not resignation. It is spiritual maturity. It is the quiet recognition that pain is not your enemy, but your teacher. It's the messenger that arrives when your soul is ready to hear something essential. And once you begin to listen to this messenger, it no longer needs to scream. It begins to speak softly, with clarity, and you begin to understand, not just intellectually, but deeply, in your bones, in your breath, in the stillness of your being. That understanding changes everything. Because when you stop fighting what you feel, you stop splitting yourself into fragments. You no longer have a part of you trying to move forward while another part is left behind, wounded and ignored. Now all of you becomes presence. Now all of you comes home. Allowing yourself to feel doesn't mean you'll remain trapped in the pain. It means you begin to acknowledge that every emotion carries a message, a truth. And when you honor that truth, the emotion no longer needs to repeat itself. Anger stops being something you need to control. It becomes something you need to understand. Sadness stops being a weakness. It becomes the cleansing water that washes away everything that no longer serves you. Loneliness stops feeling like punishment. Instead, it becomes a sacred space, a quiet temple within, where you finally begin to hear your own voice, where your essence speaks. And when you choose to live like this again and again, you begin to move from a different place, from an inner honesty that doesn't seek perfection, but seeks alignment, coherence. You no longer feel the urge to explain what you're feeling, or to justify it, or hide it. You simply live in it, embody it. And in that act of embodiment, something deep within you is set free. Because listening to what you feel is, in truth, listening to your soul. And when that happens, awakening stops being a distant spiritual idea and becomes an embodied experience. It becomes a way of living, with an open heart, with a receptive body, and with an awakened soul. Listening to your emotions means you no longer have to break yourself apart just to be accepted. You stop forcing yourself to keep going when your inner world is asking for stillness. You stop repressing what moves through you just to appear strong. You begin to live in alignment with your inner world. And though this may not be visible to others, it brings you back to yourself. You no longer need anyone else to validate your process, because the deepest validation arises from the silence within you. The silence that arrives when you finally stop betraying yourself, when you finally say, "This is what I feel, and that's okay. This is who I am right now, and that too is valid." And from that place, something entirely new is born. A quiet strength, a softness that stands firm, a self no longer built from defense, but from integration. Because when you listen to what you feel, you stop fighting your own story. And when the battle ends, healing begins, not with words, but with presence. Pain no longer defines you. It transforms you. It becomes the space in which your consciousness expands, where every part of who you are is allowed to exist. You no longer have to choose between your light and your shadow, because you now understand that both are essential to your awakening. You've stopped fighting yourself. And that, perhaps, is the greatest act of love you can offer your soul. Thank you for being here. If, while listening to these words, you felt something move inside you, don't ignore it. It's not random. It's not a coincidence. It's your soul recognizing itself. It's a reminder that you are not broken. You are awakening. Carl Jung once said that the encounter with oneself often begins with pain, because only through darkness do we truly learn to see the light. And if you are in that place right now, if you're walking through that darkness, you are not alone. You are standing at the threshold of a transformation that goes far beyond what can be seen or explained. You don't need to have all the answers. You only need to follow the thread of truth that is beginning to weave itself through your being. Follow it with patience. Follow it with awareness. And know, deep in your heart, that pain, when listened to, becomes wisdom. If this message has resonated with your journey, if it has put words to something you've been quietly feeling inside, I invite you to continue walking this path with me. Keep exploring. Keep returning to yourself with the calm, the strength, and the depth that only an awakened soul knows. Thank you for being. Thank you for existing. You're not here by coincidence. Something deep within you led you to this video at this very moment, and by the time it ends, you'll understand why. The awakening of the inner archetype is not something that can be forced or rushed. It's a silent and profound process, an invitation from the soul to remember its true essence, to reconnect with that primordial energy that has always been present within you, lying dormant until now. Even if it manifests in subtle ways, there are unmistakable signs that this awakening has already begun. One of the first is the sense that an internal force has started to guide you, even if you can't describe it with words. It's not just an ordinary intuition. It's a powerful feeling, as if something ancient and wise inside you has taken the reins of your life, influencing your choices with a strength that feels both familiar and mysterious. You no longer make decisions solely based on logic or the expectations of others. Instead, you're moved by a deeper calling that pulls you toward becoming more authentically yourself. This inner force doesn't require external justification. It expresses itself as a quiet certainty, as a compass that points the way even in the midst of confusion. Your life begins to align with patterns you hadn't noticed before. Symbols, synchronicities, encounters. They start appearing, resonating in a way that goes beyond reason or intellect. And though you may not fully understand why you're drawn to certain paths or people, something inside you knows it's not a coincidence. It's your inner archetype surfacing, claiming its rightful space in your daily existence. This inner energy begins to shape not just your thoughts, but also your language, the way you walk, the way you observe the world, the way you now make choices you would have previously avoided. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you have always been at your core. And this remembering doesn't come as a mental image. It's a visceral certainty, one that anchors itself in your body, in your voice, in the way you remain present without the need to conform. You begin to sense that something inside you is falling into place, as if all the scattered pieces are finally aligning, even if you can't yet explain why. You're no longer acting out of a desire to please or to fulfill inherited expectations. Now, your gestures, your decisions, even your silences respond to a force that doesn't come from the outside, but from the deepest part of your soul. You also start noticing that this force becomes especially active in moments of tension, of crisis, of transformation. And instead of dragging you down, it holds you up. It reminds you of what you've always carried within, what you came here to embody, and what you can no longer ignore. Your energy begins to gain direction, even if the destination isn't entirely clear. But that doesn't scare you. For the first time, you feel like you're walking toward yourself. And as you continue along this path, that internal energy becomes increasingly recognizable. Not because the world around you changes, but because you begin to see it more clearly in your everyday life, in the way you stand tall when faced with tough decisions, in how you say no without guilt, in how you hold on to your truth without needing to explain it. You're no longer seeking validation in anyone else's eyes, because that validation has started to grow from within, not as inflated ego, but as deep, unwavering integrity. You realize there's a part of you that was never meant to be learned, only remembered. And that memory doesn't come from the mind, it comes from the soul. You begin to surround yourself with people, places, and things that nourish that energy in you. It's as if your external world is rearranging itself so you can finally become who you were meant to be. You lose interest in meaningless conversations and roles that never truly fit you. Your energy no longer wants to just survive. It wants to express itself, to expand, to live fully. And this is the moment when your inner archetype not only awakens, it begins to integrate into your life. It's no longer just an abstract concept. It becomes a living force, one that urges you to speak more honestly, to move with more intention, and to live with more coherence. And that impulse can no longer be silenced. Because once your inner archetype awakens, everything that doesn't align with it begins to dissolve. Another sign of this awakening is a shift in your attention. You start to notice symbols, images, and messages that you used to overlook. This is not random. The language of the archetype isn't literal. It's symbolic, intuitive, profound. You begin to see certain numbers, words, shapes, or recurring dreams. They don't appear as superstition, but as real manifestations of what's moving within you. Your unconscious mind, which once operated quietly in the background, begins to communicate with you through signs that only you can truly interpret. You may find yourself suddenly drawn to certain animals, to ancient myths, or to archetypal figures like the wise elder, the healer, the guide, the warrior, or the inner lover. And it's not about outward admiration or wanting to become something you're not. It's something far deeper. It's an inner recognition, an echo from within that tells you this isn't new. It's not something you have to chase or become. It's something you already are. And now you're remembering it. A memory awakening, not from your mind, but from your soul. Symbols begin to appear in your dreams, strange yet familiar images that seem to carry a message. Unexpected visions emerge during meditation, or simple, seemingly random moments throughout the day align perfectly to show you something vital. And even if no one else sees it, you feel it deep in your bones. It's real, not necessarily in the visible world, but in the energetic one, in the emotional layers that transform you from the inside out. These symbols don't ask for logic. They ask for presence, for trust, for the kind of knowing that doesn't need to be proven, because it already is. You start to realize that your life isn't just a chain of random events. It's a vast and intricate web of deep meanings, a sacred language that you're only now beginning to decode. And with every moment of insight, that hidden script doesn't tell you who you should become. It reveals who you've always been, at the core of your sacred essence. It's like learning to read a map you didn't know you were carrying, and once you begin, everything changes. The ordinary starts to speak in extraordinary ways. Your daily life, once filled with routine and automatic behaviors, becomes infused with meaning. You no longer crave grand answers, because every small sign, every subtle shift, brings a forgotten part of you back to life, a long-lost emotion, a hidden strength, a truth that had waited in silence for years just to be named. This symbolic connection doesn't just make you more aware, it makes you more open. Your intuition sharpens, your inner compass begins to point more clearly. You no longer just feel, you understand, on a much deeper level, the things you once overlooked. You begin to see that certain emotions, cycles, and people didn't enter your life by accident. Each one is a mirror, reflecting some part of you that longs to be seen, acknowledged, and understood. And with that realization, your outer reality becomes a reflection of your inner evolution. Not because the world has changed, but because your way of seeing it has. You're now perceiving it from a different place, a sacred place, where everything communicates, where even the most subtle detail becomes a signpost guiding you toward a more complete version of yourself. From this heightened awareness, discomfort no longer feels like something to escape. Instead, you see it for what it truly is, a message in disguise, a fragment of your archetype waiting to be embodied. And that willingness to look with different eyes, to feel instead of flee, is the clearest sign that a deep wisdom is awakening within you. Not the kind learned through books or teachings, but a wisdom born of the soul, nurtured by experience. This kind of wisdom doesn't arrive as a lightning bolt of sudden clarity. It rises slowly, quietly, expanding your awareness and transforming the way you experience everything. What once felt like conflict now becomes an invitation to explore the parts of yourself that react, to question the origins of your fears, to sit with emotions you used to run from. Because now you understand. Each emotion holds a key that opens a door to something greater, something that has always lived within you. And gradually, you become more intimate with yourself, not through ideas or philosophies, but through the daily practice of presence, of sitting with yourself in silence, not to escape, but to listen, to truly hear what's moving in your deepest layers. Your internal dialogue begins to shift. You no longer speak to yourself with doubt or blame. You speak with care, like someone who knows they're on a sacred journey, someone who doesn't need to have it all figured out, but can no longer afford to keep ignoring their truth. You start to see that the symbols don't just come in dreams or signs from the universe. They appear in your reactions, your repeated words, the patterns you project onto others, what you criticize, what you admire, what you fear or avoid, all of it reveals your inner world more than the external one. And instead of feeling overwhelmed by this realization, you feel empowered, because now you know you have the tools to transform what once felt fixed and immovable. Even your life cycles become clearer. You begin to notice how certain patterns repeat, not as punishment, but as opportunities to integrate unresolved parts of yourself. You become aware of the exact moment when the old version of you wants to take control again. But this time, something's different. You don't react automatically. This time, you pause, you breathe, you choose differently. You choose from a deeper place, a place where your archetype is not a concept, but a living force within you. It structures your choices, sustains your path, and gives shape to your inner world. And with this connection, your experience of life becomes richer. You're no longer trapped at the surface. You dive into the depths, navigating the hidden language of the essential. And you do it with the calm clarity of someone who no longer needs to escape, because you've begun to recognize yourself in the very things you once avoided. The third sign appears when something deep within you begins to shift, when your identity starts to shed the layers of roles, personas, and masks that no longer align with your true essence. This transformation isn't superficial, and it certainly isn't a fleeting act of rebellion. It's not about changing your style or updating your appearance. It's a profound internal purification, a deep and sometimes unsettling process where you begin to see, perhaps for the first time, that much of what you believed yourself to be wasn't really you. It becomes painfully clear that many aspects of your personality were merely adaptations, constructs designed to make you feel safe, accepted, validated. You had unconsciously created characters, molded versions of yourself, just to fit in, to avoid rejection, to gain approval, or simply to survive in a world that demands conformity. But something inside you stirs. Something ancient and wise begins to wake up. When your inner archetype starts to awaken, these roles, however useful they once were, can no longer sustain themselves. Not because they are inherently wrong or bad, but because they've become too limited, too small to hold the immense energy that is now beginning to surge through your being. Suddenly, pretending becomes unbearable. You can no longer feign interest in things that don't resonate with your soul. The illusion starts to dissolve. Relationships that once felt comfortable or even necessary begin to feel hollow. You realize that you can't keep walking paths your spirit never chose, even if you once fought hard to be on them. What once looked like success now feels empty, void of meaning. And what you once avoided, out of fear, uncertainty, or conditioning, now draws you in with a quiet but undeniable force. This detachment isn't always graceful. In fact, it can feel like mourning. Letting go of masks and identities that you wore for years can feel like losing pieces of yourself. But in truth, you're not losing anything essential. You're returning. You're being stripped down to your core, to the raw and unchangeable part of you that cannot be bargained with or diluted. It's not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. You're allowing everything that distracted you from your inner truth to fall away. And as it does, a more real, more coherent version of yourself begins to emerge. You start to see yourself differently, not through the lens of what you do or achieve, but through the energy you carry, through the silent truth you radiate in your presence, your gestures, your choices. Even if others don't understand this change, you feel it clearly. It's a clarity that doesn't come from intellectual analysis. It comes from having listened to yourself for so long that ignoring your truth is no longer an option. You feel it in your bones. You feel it in your breath. You've come to know yourself too intimately to keep pretending. Letting go of these old roles gives you a kind of freedom you didn't even know was possible. It's not the freedom to do whatever you want without consequence. It's the freedom of walking without the heavy burden of pleasing an outdated image of yourself. You no longer need to live up to expectations that never really fit you in the first place. You discover you can be firm without being harsh, vulnerable without feeling exposed, authentic without fearing loss, because your sense of belonging no longer depends on others' approval, but on your inner alignment. Your energy stops scattering between what you feel and what you do. You start moving from a place of deep stillness, yet incredible power. The need to control, to manipulate outcomes, to force understanding, all of it begins to fade. You're no longer acting to be accepted. You're simply being. And this being doesn't require explanation. It is so grounded in truth that anything which doesn't align with it naturally falls away. Even your relationship with discomfort transforms. In the past, discomfort was something to run from. It threatened the masks you wore. But now, you lean into it. You welcome it, because you understand that discomfort is a sacred messenger. It reveals where you're still holding back, where you're still attached to outdated versions of yourself. And in that awareness, you allow yourself to grieve, not with attachment, but with reverence. You honor who you once were without clinging to it, because now there is space, real space, for a fuller, deeper presence to live through you. Life becomes simpler, yet more meaningful. There's less noise, but more depth. You no longer feel the need to decorate your achievements or hide your healing. You feel at home in your process, at peace with your pace, aligned with your path. You understand now that the true power of the archetype awakening within you does not lie in what you achieve. It lies in what you embody, and you have begun to embody your truth. And once you do that, the need to look outside yourself for validation disappears. You're no longer searching for figures to imitate. You're seeking resonance. You're drawn to depth. You're guided by connections that are rooted in authenticity, not obligation. Living from this deeper identity makes you more selective about what you consume, what you share, what you allow into your energetic field. You stop explaining yourself to those who aren't willing to understand. You stop trying to be seen by people who only recognize the surface, because your worth no longer hinges on being understood by everyone. It's now grounded in being honest with yourself. And this changes the way you relate to others, not from a place of need, but from presence, not from a mask, but from the frequency you emit simply by being real. That frequency begins to shape a new reality around you. You attract people who vibrate at the same depth. You find yourself in spaces where you can finally breathe without performing. You receive opportunities that don't feel like obligations. They feel like answers. Answers from the universe, responding to your authenticity. And you also realize something profound. You're no longer available for what drains you. Not because you reject it, not because you judge it, but because you love yourself enough to choose clarity. And that clarity brings peace. A peace that can't be bargained for, because you've earned it. You earned it by releasing everything that distanced you from yourself. Your silence now speaks louder than words. It doesn't need to convince. It only needs to be. And in that being, something sacred is felt. something ancient, something that was always there, but buried. It's not an idealized version of yourself. It's your essence, stripped of interference. It's your archetype in motion. It's your soul, finally in coherence. The fourth sign. You begin to experience a profound reconnection with parts of yourself that were never truly gone, just hidden, buried beneath layers of fear, conditioning, and forgetfulness. These are not qualities you're newly acquiring, but pieces of your essence that had been silenced, shamed, or simply overlooked. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you've always been at your core. Suddenly, traits you once saw as flaws, your intensity, your deep sensitivity, your unconventional perspective, begin to rise to the surface again, not as burdens, but as gifts. You start to realize that your strength was never arrogance, it was clarity. Your emotional depth was never weakness, it was empathy. And your unique way of seeing the world, once mistaken for madness, was simply a heightened form of perception, a different kind of wisdom that doesn't conform to the norm, but transcends it. This remembrance doesn't come from your logical mind. It comes from your soul. It emerges from that sacred space within you where your archetype has always resided, dormant, but never absent, waiting patiently to be reawakened. This awakening doesn't construct something new. Rather, it activates what has always been. It stirs your natural talents, your intuitive knowing, your sacred way of being a bridge between the invisible and the visible, the spiritual and the material. You begin to feel more whole, not because everything in your life is suddenly perfect, but because you're no longer at war with yourself. You stop resisting your own essence. The internal battle softens, and in its place, a previously unknown peace begins to bloom. It's a peace that doesn't come from external circumstances, but from finally inhabiting your entire being without fragmenting yourself. The emotions that used to overwhelm you now serve as teachers. The impulses you once suppressed now sharpen into precise intuition. That ache inside you to express, to create, to speak your truth. It no longer stems from fear or anxiety. It becomes a sacred urgency, a deep calling that you can no longer ignore. You begin to feel an undeniable need to create, to communicate, to give form to what your soul feels, because now you understand. This is also part of your purpose. Even if you're still on the journey, you come to a beautiful realization. You don't need to evolve into some better version of yourself. You only need to continue making space for that inner voice, that presence within you that already knows who you are, why you're here, and that finally, at last, has been given permission to bloom. And when this part of you begins to bloom, it doesn't do so with noise or with the need to be seen. It blooms in silence, in quiet determination, the way truth always does. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth, because you see now that your worth has always been there, waiting for you to stop hiding it, waiting for you to stop apologizing for it, waiting for the moment when you'd allow it to speak freely through your every word and action. What you once repressed in order to fit in, you now honor as the very essence of what makes you unique. Your creativity, your emotional intensity, your capacity to sense what others cannot, all the things you tried to silence so you wouldn't be too much, now rise in you like sacred flames. They're not accessories, they're not burdens, they're sacred tools, alive and vibrant, meant to guide you back to your archetypal energy. This energy isn't interested in labels. It doesn't obey formulas or expectations. It is wise, ancient, sometimes even contradictory, but always real, always true. And slowly, you begin to live from that place with less fear, with more surrender. A quiet confidence takes root in you, one that no longer depends on being validated by others. You stop defining yourself by how others see you. You begin to define yourself by what you are able to hold within, by your own inner presence, your own unwavering truth. This gives you a deep, grounded stability, not because everything in your life is under control, but because you've learned to trust your own roots. You've learned to lean into that inner fire that never goes out, even when the outside world tries to dim it. You begin to understand that you don't have to be in perfect balance all the time in order to be in alignment. Because living from your archetype doesn't mean being enlightened. It means being awake. And being awake means embracing both your darkness and your light. It means holding space for your chaos as much as your order. Because everything within you has a role. Every part of you, even the ones you once rejected, are now seen for what they truly are, necessary components of your awakening. And as you integrate them, your energy expands, not outward into the world in search of approval, but inward into yourself, into the sacred soil of your being. And from that deep inner space, a new reality begins to take shape. That new reality isn't something you fabricate. It's not built on the expectations of others. It is a natural manifestation of your energy, now unified, no longer torn between roles and masks. You are no longer trapped between what the world wants from you and what your soul longs to express. You now act from a single place, your truth. And when your truth becomes the foundation of your choices, even the smallest decision begins to carry a new weight, a new clarity. You no longer say yes to what steals your peace. You no longer choose from a place of lack or desperation. You've learned the sacred art of waiting, not out of fear, but out of knowing who you are. And once you recognize yourself, you no longer sell yourself short. You no longer rush. You no longer hide. Your way of moving through life becomes more steady, more intentional, more sacred. Because when your inner archetype awakens, everything you touch begins to vibrate differently. Your words carry new power. Your gaze holds more presence. Even your silence speaks louder than any speech. And this shift, though not always noticed by others, can be felt. It's felt in the rooms you enter. It's felt in the people who gravitate toward you. It's felt in the way everything around you seems to move, with more harmony, as if life itself finally recognizes that you've returned to your center, to your essence, to the exact point where everything can grow without distortion. You're no longer playing a role. You're no longer trying to become someone. You're simply remembering who you've always been. And as you remember, your soul breathes more freely, more lightly, more truthfully. And the fifth sign appears when your entire perception of purpose shifts. It no longer feels like something external you need to chase. Instead, it becomes something you embody. In the past, your purpose may have seemed like a distant goal, something to be discovered, searched for, or even achieved through effort and perseverance. You may have believed you needed to follow certain steps, meet specific expectations, or reach an ideal state before you could truly live in alignment with it. But now, something profound has changed within you. From the moment your inner archetype awakens, you begin to realize a powerful truth. Purpose isn't something you do. It's something you are. It's not a career, a destination, or a role to play. It's the natural expression of your most authentic self. And when you allow yourself to simply be, without masks, without filters, without self-denial, what you came here to do begins to manifest effortlessly. Your mere presence begins to carry weight and meaning. Existential questions no longer paralyze you the way they once did. And it's not because you suddenly have all the answers. It's because you've stopped depending on external formulas. You no longer need someone to hand you a roadmap. You've realized that your path is unlike any other, that your unique expression is sacred. Every experience, every wound, every moment, even the ones that once felt senseless or painful, was part of a design your soul had to break free from in order to step fully into the space that belongs to you. Now, the meaning of your life isn't measured by visible results or accomplishments. Instead, it's reflected in what awakens inside you and inside others, simply through your presence. You're no longer obsessed with doing something extraordinary. You're more concerned with living each moment from a place of depth and truth. You've begun to understand that even the simplest act becomes sacred when it flows from authenticity. Something within you no longer allows you to live on autopilot. What you once tolerated without question now feels unbearably heavy. Activities that lack soul, words spoken without intention, routines that feel empty, all of it drains you more than any physical effort. Because once your inner archetype has awakened, it won't let you fall asleep again. It won't let you forget who you truly are or why you're here. Even if the world continues spinning in its usual rhythm, you've stopped running alongside it. You've slowed down. You're no longer trying to keep up. Instead, you're walking in step with your soul, at its pace, in its cadence, and in its truth. And that way of walking, even though it looks different from what others may expect, is the only one that can lead you to a life that truly belongs to you. And when you begin to live a life that truly belongs to you, you feel something change. Everything you do carries a new energy. You're no longer driven by impulse or obligation. You move with intention, from resonance. Every action comes from a quiet, clear space within. A space that no longer holds confusion or noise, only direction. You come to understand that purpose is not some grand event waiting to happen. It's present in every choice you make that reflects your essence. It's in every moment you choose peace over approval. Every time you choose silence over reaction. Every time you refuse to betray yourself, even if it means disappointing others' expectations of you. That inner alignment becomes your new measure of success. You no longer need achievements to feel worthy. You no longer need recognition to feel on the right path. Your compass is now invisible to the eyes of the world, but it's unwaveringly clear to your soul. Things that once seemed small now feel significant. A sincere gesture, a moment of deep presence, an encounter that stirs something within. All of it takes on a sacred weight, one you used to reserve only for the extraordinary. This is one of the clearest signs that your inner archetype is not only awake, it has become fully embodied. You're no longer seeking meaning in distant places. You're planting it here and now, with every step you take in alignment, with every word that comes from your center, with every day you choose not to forget who you are. That steady, quiet, and consistent decision to be true to yourself is the most real manifestation of your purpose. It doesn't require applause or validation. You feel it in your body. You sense it in your breath. In the calm that remains, even when the world outside is chaotic. You realize that life is no longer about finding the path, but about walking it with loyalty to yourself, holding your truth, even when it isn't the most popular or the easiest. And that's where the extraordinary happens, not like a sudden explosion or dramatic change, but like a soft, elegant alignment between your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. Your energy is no longer scattered. Your mind becomes quiet. Your presence becomes deeper and more grounded. You stop pushing life to happen. Things begin to flow, naturally, organically, with the exact rhythm your soul has always needed. Even your relationship with time transforms. You stop chasing. You stop rushing. You begin to receive, allowing things to come when you are ready, not when the world demands them. This shift in frequency pulls you away from burnout. It frees you from the exhausting pressure to prove yourself. It gives you the serenity to simply be, to live, to feel, to create, from a place of truth. This is how purpose stops being a goal and becomes a way of inhabiting the world. And although the path will still bring its challenges, you no longer get lost in them. Because now, you know exactly where everything begins to make sense. Inside of you. If this message resonates with something deep within, it's because that inner archetype has already started to awaken. You don't have to do anything dramatic to be worthy of this. You simply have to allow yourself to be who you truly are, with everything that entails, with everything it liberates. Remember, you're not discovering something new. You're returning to what is essential. And that return is the most powerful spiritual act there is. Don't rush. Don't force. Your truth has no urgency, but it does have direction. And if this message has lit something within you, if it has walked beside you in this moment of your journey, then keep exploring with us. Keep deepening the path of awakening, of soul, of consciousness, of true transformation. Because the truth already lives inside you. It's not lost. It's simply waiting to be lived.